Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for all my continued followers, I want to say thank you. And this is an opinion-based video channel where I try to open your eyes and ears up to some of the travails and tribulations that take place throughout our cities, our states, our country, and sometimes around the world. And I got another one straight out of South Florida, Miami Gardens, where a police shooting and an alleged innocent victim gets killed by the Miami Gardens police. And there's a lot of controversy and suspicion on whether the gentleman that got killed by the police was actually the target they were looking for. So there is a lot of outcry and uproar that's taking place in Miami Gardens, which has a heavy influx of Haitian, Jamaicans, and different types of individuals that live there. And we have this dichotomy of black and white police officer, black civilian getting shot. And of course, you know that always creates great controversy. So let's go. Suspect killed in shootout with Miami Gardens police amid a string of targeted shootings. 3 people in custody. A suspect was killed and 3 others were taken into custody following a shootout with police in Miami Gardens, making it the latest in a series of violent incidences in that area. The shooting left his mother, Angela Lewis, devastated and asking for answers. She said he was a good person. I want my baby, and I wish this never happened, she said. The confrontation occurred just before 11 p.m. along Northwest 27th Street near 161st Street, where Miami Gardens police officers and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms claimed they were responding to reports of shots fired. The gunfire rattled the nerves of area residents. We were scared, said a woman who lives in the neighborhood. It is scary, said a man who lives in the neighborhood. According to authorities, once they arrived, the officers were met with gunfire from suspects and return fire, according to the police. We were doing a joint detail with Miami Gardens Police Department in response to violent crime activity in the area. Unfortunately, some individuals discharged fire at some Miami Gardens detectives as well as some of my agents, said Special Agent Christopher A. Robinson of ATF Miami Field Division. He said, I watched him, Miss Angela Lewis responded by saying, I watched my son take his last breaths. The grieving parent said investigators' account of the shootout is inaccurate, claiming it was police who pulled the trigger first. We all didn't know what was going on, who was outside. I watched them kill my son, Miss Angela said. My daughter was beating on the door, saying someone was chasing them from the store, which in turn turned out to be the police. And my son, naturally, he was in the house. So her son was not even in a car, the car that the so-called unmarked police officers were following. His sister was in the car and they thought somebody was following them. They drive to the house fast. She gets out and goes in the house, and her brother opens the door. And that's when he was shot at least 5 times by the Miami Garden police. Angela said her son's cousin and other people rushed to their home after they drove through the gate and into the backyard. The cousin, Jafari Russell, said the ordeal began not far from the home, where he and his friends noticed they were being followed. We're being chased by 3 cars, said Russell. I'm terrified for my life. There's 3 cars, black, tinted up cars, chasing us at around 11 p.m. that night. Russell said he heard gunshots and later learned that the people following him were the police and his cousin had been shot and killed. Miami Gardens police said officers had no choice but to fire. They were fired upon, and as a result, our officers went ahead and returned fire, said Miami Gardens Police Chief Delma Noel Pratt. One individual was struck, and he's unfortunately deceased, said Robinson. And the decedent is Miss Angela's son, who was at the house and was not in the car. I'm reiterating that again. All he did was open the door for his sister, who was yelling and screaming that someone was chasing them. Officers then took Angela's daughter, Russell, and one other person into custody for questioning. As of late Friday night, remains unclear whether they will be facing any charges. Angela says Daniel was a registered gun owner, her son, but she doesn't know if he was armed at the time of the shooting. What she does know is the kind of man she raised. He's a good man. He loved his kids. He has no gang ties. He is a father of two, she said. ATF said 2 guns were found near Daniel's body. His 6-year-old daughter, who he adored and called his twin, witnessed the shooting. His 6-year-old daughter watched her father get killed by the police. She's not taking it well. She can't sleep at this moment, and we haven't been asleep either, Miss Angela said. In the past month, the city of Miami Gardens has seen a string of violent shootings that have been labeled targeted and gang-related. As a result, police and the ATF have been out in full force to try to keep the peace. If folks feel like they can come out here and be brazen enough to commit this violent crime and fire upon our law enforcement officers, we would deal with them accordingly, said Chief Noel Pratt. We hear the community's outcry as a result of the last 2 shootings. We have been out here doing proactive details with our local, state, and federal partners, said Noel Pratt. But Daniel's mother said gang activity had nothing to do with his death. He has no gang ties. Nothing, Miss Angela repeatedly said. On Friday morning, aerial footage from 7 Sky Force captured the body behind a house where it appeared to be burned. This is another victim that was deceased, but not killed by the police. According to Noel Pratt, there were at least 2 fires near the deceased body. Angela said her son had no idea who rushed up to their home before shots were fired, and she believes that if officers had identified themselves or used lights and sirens, this incident could have been avoided. She said she just wants one thing from the city. I need peace and the truth. That's it. I just want the truth, she said. Miami Gardens police and city leaders have not responded to the mother's inquiries and claims. The shootout remains under investigation by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. So, we have another scenario or an allegation or conspiracy of egregious South Florida Miami Gardens police officers making a rush to judgment and allegedly chasing or following a car at 11 p.m., 3 unmarked police cars, tinted windows. We know how dangerous many of our urban cities can be. Miami Gardens, Dade County, has had a long plethora and history of problems with criminal activity, assaults, drug trafficking. So it is a balancing act for police officers when you have a high crime area to try to make a rash and appropriate decision on situations. But sometimes that's at a blink of an eye or a blink of a second in defense of the police. But if we have the appropriate vetted, measured police officers that have a history of dealing with crime activity, then hopefully their judgment 99.9 or 100% of the time can be correct, and they do not end up shooting and killing an innocent victim or citizen. For those who follow me, I did a previous video on another South Florida gentleman who was a military personnel and vet, a young man, 23 years old, when an officer knocked on his door aggressively, and the police officer was going to a domestic violence disturbance, knocked on the wrong door. This 23-year-old military gentleman opened the door with his gun down, and the officer shot him 5 to 7 times immediately and killed him while his girlfriend was FaceTiming him. So that story is under conspiracy suspicion and has heightened the sensitivities of people in South Florida. And this gentleman was a young man who was a military guy who was on the same side of law enforcement as you would think of as a police officer. And he gets killed by he was a black military gentleman, young in his early 20s, and he was shot by a white police officer. And now you have this scenario where several white police officers were following a car of Daniel's sister. She didn't know what was going on, if they were getting carjacked or somebody was trying to shoot them. She ends up running, parking the car, getting to the house, running up to the door. Her brother Daniel opens the door because he hears his sister screaming. The police get out and they shoot Daniel 5 times in front of his 6-year-old daughter. Daniel's mother, Miss Angela, says that her son was not gang related, was a good guy. And now this is another scenario of possible overexuberance by the Miami Gardens police. We have to find out, or was it an appropriate measure and an act to take? Witnesses are saying Daniel did not have a weapon in his hand, and he was just opening a door and was seeing what the commotion was with his sister and his cousins. And multiple witnesses say that the police egregiously and aggressively shot Daniel 5 times without a weapon in his hand and killed him in front of his family. There was also a case out of Ohio that I did a video on a few months ago of an Ohio young man who also was opening the door or entering his home when a undercover police officer approached him on his steps of his home, and the alleged white officer shot this black young man that had a Subway sandwich in his hand multiple times, killing him in front of his grandmother and his family. We have to make sure we are taking the appropriate measures to make sure we're vetting the right police officers, and hopefully they can make the right decisions at the right time and innocent lives do not have to be taken. And we have this dichotomy and this chasm of white officers with black civilians, where white officers are making aggressive behaviors towards young black men, and many times it leads to assault and death. This is happening way too much in our country, and we need to do something about it. Our law enforcement, our public safety, and our citizens in our cities and our states need to find a way to align with each other and live a positive and righteous life. Tell me what you think about this story out of Miami Gardens, where several police officers allegedly shot an innocent black man at his home just by him opening a door for his sister. And they did not know what these 3 unmarked cars were. There was no outwardly evidence that it was the police, according to witnesses. They didn't know what was going on, and Mr. Daniel ended up getting killed, shot 5 times in front of his daughter. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a righteous, positive, and God-fearing way.